Hello, everyone, and welcome to End of Life University podcast, where we share real talk about life and death. I'm your host, Dr. Karen Wyatt. Thanks for joining me here for episode number 304. In just a few moments, I'll share with you an interview I did with Karl Shackelford, who's the creator of the We Grieve community. And we talk a lot about men and grief and how he has started a men-only grief community on his website. And it's really fitting to be having this discussion. The day this episode airs is the day after Father's Day. So it's a good time to honor the men in our lives and also to be aware that there are differences in how men and women grieve. And as I commented to Karl, as you'll hear in the interview, I think sometimes many of us who start movements like grief communities and support groups are women, and we may overlook in some ways the specific needs of men. And so I'm really thrilled that Karl is taking that on and creating a very successful group for men to come together and share their grief. So stay tuned. We'll get to that in just a moment. But I wanted to remind you, coming up soon on June 25th is a free workshop on writing a legacy love letter. And this is with Michelle Pantay and Rena Lazar of Willow EOL. And as part of that workshop, so this particular workshop is one of the assets that is contained within their EOL Educators program. So they're giving you a preview of what that workshop would be like, but there are many, many other workshops within their program that you can get access to and utilize if you become an EOL educator through their Willow site. And so they're also going to tell us a little more about that EOL educator program, which has just launched in the last few months. And you'll learn how you might sign up for it if you're interested. And also, I'm going to be offering some bonuses to people who sign up. So on this free workshop, you'll hear from them about the EOL educator program after we do our legacy love letters together. And then I'll share with you the free bonuses that I'll offer as well if you decide to become an EOL educator. You have probably heard me talk a lot about how important I think end-of-life education is in our communities. The only way we're really going to move forward and provide better care to people at the end of life is if we have a massive movement toward educating the general public about these end-of-life issues. So that's one reason I'm really passionate about the EOL Educator program that Rena and Michelle have created, and I'm excited to share it with you in more depth on Friday, June 25th. There will be a link to register in the show notes for this episode, and register if you're at all interested, because I will record it and send out the replay if you can't attend live. So go to the show notes at eolupodcast.com, look for episode number 304, scroll down to where it says links mentioned in this episode, and you'll see a link where you can go right to the registration page and sign up and join us for that workshop on Friday. I hope I see you there. So we'll move on now to the interview with Karl Shackelford, and as always, stay tuned. At the end of the interview, I'll be back with a few takeaways and to say goodbye. So here we go. Today, I'm very happy to welcome my guest, Karl Shackelford. Karl is a board-certified clinical chaplain and an unlicensed psychotherapist with the state of Colorado. He is also a certified HeartMath trainer who helps those struggling with the effects of stress, anxiety, and adversity to build resilience. He provides resources for hurting people through individual counseling, support groups, workshops, and offers effective tools for walking through the most difficult times in life. Karl is the founder of We Grieve, which is an online community where grieving people come together to heal, and we'll be talking a lot about We Grieve today. And you can learn more about it at the website wegrieve.net. So Karl, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, you're so welcome, Dr. White. It's good to be here.
It's really nice to talk with you again because we've known each other through hospice work. You were the hospice chaplain when we first met, and we facilitated some retreats together for the hospice staff, which was really wonderful. And then, Karl, when I received an email from you just recently and found out that you had started We Grieve, I was really excited to reach out and just chat with you more about that. So we'll get into that in just a moment. But I thought maybe for the listeners, you could tell us just a little bit about your journey, what brought you to hospice as a chaplain in the first place, and then how you ended up founding We Grieve.
Thank you, Dr. White. I'd be happy to do that. And it's such a privilege to be with you today and to get to see you again. Wonderful. I've been in the helping profession my whole adult life. Faith is a very strong part of my life. Like you said, I'm a chaplain. And from early on, I felt a call to really work with people in many different ways and helping people through some of the difficult times of life seems to be where I've been drawn, especially with the experiences that I've had with regard to loss in my life and in many different ways. It's like in this particular time of my life, I'm kind of in the sweet spot of education, experience, training, skills, mistakes, all of that together gives me the tools to do what I do and the passion, I think, to do what I do. So I care about people from a number of different perspectives. Early on, it was through ministry work, through the church. And about 12, 13 years ago, I got my board certification as a chaplain and went to work with Denver Hospice and worked with people who were at end of life and did a fair amount of training and education with our staff and worked with helping people put tools together for how to deal with traumatic or at least, the very least, stressful or anxious, anxiety-producing situations. And so that has brought me to this place through that journey of working with people in the area of grief.
And so I know you were mentioning to me that during this past year with COVID, you really ended up bringing your grief services online when in-person groups became impossible. So that's how We Grieve was born?
Yeah, good question. When I was working with Denver Hospice, at the same time, I was building a private counseling practice on my own, very small, just a few people. And I also was working with a local church in terms of their grief recovery programs. And so I was doing one-on-one with people. I was creating workshops and training facilitators for these workshops. And for probably 10 or 12 years was doing that before We Grieve. And so I have been for some time looking for ways to connect people around grief and to provide resources and help because it's such a difficult task in our society to find space and support to be able to talk about grief. And so you're right. We had 110 people scheduled for a 4-week workshop on the topic of grief. These were all people who had lost someone who were experiencing the pain of loss. And because of COVID, we had to cancel that 1 week before its beginning date. And those 110 people and all the ones that were connected to them then had no help from that workshop, or that what they were looking forward to, they couldn't access it. And for weeks, I thought about that. I thought about where they're going to go, what are they going to do? And I guess it was probably the tipping point that pushed me into a place of deciding that it was time for me to do something that would create a community, possibly maybe a virtual community that a pandemic couldn't stop, that we would be able to bring people together to heal. And so that's where We Grieve was born. I began working on it in June of 2020, the year of the pandemic. And then it went live in March of 2021, just now a few months ago. And so it's relatively new community, but it provides support, grief support for those who are experiencing loss.
And as they say, necessity is the mother of invention, but really how difficult it was to lose the ability to hold your grief support groups in a year when we needed that kind of support more than ever before. And so I'm grateful that you chose to move everything online to be able to continue to offer this kind of support. And I know on your website, you refer to We Grieve as a community of communities. And I was interested that you're creating communities around different types of loss, I guess, to bring people together who are experiencing common types of loss.
Right. To me, the impetus of that is based on the fact that when we experience loss, one of the things we discover very quickly is we run out of people to talk to about it. It's just not appropriate in our society to talk about suffering or to talk about pain or to be emotional in front of others. And it's something that our culture pushes back against. And like you said, hardly at any other time in our history has there been more pain and fewer opportunities to be able to be together to work through it than right now. And so I don't know, in my mind, I kind of see it like, our lives are busy, they're full of activity, or we're heading down the highway 70 miles an hour with our life. And suddenly someone that we care about, who we love, comes to the end of their life, and our life comes to a screeching halt right there on that highway where we go from 70 to 0, and we're faced with the emotional pain of that loss. And for a few days, even a few weeks, for some, even a few months, our friends and family stop with us, and they're there for us. They support us. They encourage us. They walk through that with us. But pretty quickly, their lives pick back up and move on. And they're back on that highway going 70 miles an hour again. But here we are, just still stuck in this place of trying to make sense of this loss. Like you said, many different types of loss. Maybe it's a parent who's been that backstop or that support for many, many years, or maybe it's a partner who I've been doing life with, and a person that I've lost is someone I woke up next to every day and did life together and worked on things together. We shared responsibilities and we were partners in life. And now I don't have that partner anymore. And there's so many changes that take place inside of us when that kind of a loss happens. Where do we go to talk about it? Who do we have to share that with? Who can help us manage our way through that? It's just a lot of change in a very short amount of time in those few weeks or months when we have everyone's attention. But when they go back to their life, here we are trying to figure it out. And I was looking for a way not only to provide resources, information, articles, things that could be helpful, but also connecting people, bringing people together. And so I saw this large community of people who were grieving, but within it, smaller communities of people who'd lost a partner or lost a parent or lost a child or a sibling or a friend, a parent or grandparent, someone who is very close, very special, these significant relationships that we don't just get over.
And one of the things that really jumped out at me when I read your email is that you are starting a grief group for guys, and it's a men only group. And so I wanted to ask you more about that, about what inspired you to create a special group for men, and to talk a little further about how men might grieve differently than women do.
All right. When I first started with workshops and bringing people together, it was amazing to me how few men were part of those groups. If we had a group of 80 to 120 people gathered for a workshop, there might be 6 or 8 men in that group when I got started. And it was alarming to me that more men wouldn't participate. We had maybe 20 or 30 facilitators. 2 or 3 of those were men who were willing to step up, walk into their grief, their own personal grief, to be able to help others. And so I just began to talk about it with men, maybe through their wives or through the other family members, to say, look, this is important for all of us to deal with. And for men to be able to have a forum and to know that there is a place where you can talk about emotion. There is a place where you can talk about pain, where things are not necessarily always solution focused, but sometimes we just take the opportunity to sit with that pain and to be in that suffering and realize that with great love and loss comes great pain. And so it's okay to feel that. It's okay to know that it hurts and to express it and talk about it with others. And through the years, more and more men gradually would come on board. And this group that we began through We Grieve actually came as an inspiration of some of the men in the community who said, we would like to be a part of a group where just guys can get together and talk about this. And so that's where this group for men began.
I agree with you, because over the years, everything that I've done, from doing death cafes, whether in person or online, and teaching classes, everything I've offered, even when I've gone out on speaking, speaking jobs here and there, the audience is predominantly women and very few men who come for any of these conversations about end-of-life issues, but especially for grief. And so I feel like you've really hit upon something that maybe one thing that holds men back is that they would like to be with their peers in a way, in order to have these conversations. But then I also think sometimes men might be rather hard on one another around expressing emotions. Do you find that as well?
I think that's a great question and interesting observation. It's part of our facilitator training to talk about how to create a safe place for both men and women, for all people to be able to express the emotion of what they're facing or what they're dealing with. But that's especially true, like you said, with men, to say, it is not a sign of weakness to show emotion. A lot of men today they fear showing emotion because that's what the example they were given when they were growing up, is they saw fathers, grandfathers who would not talk about how they felt or didn't really have words for emotions. Interestingly, in my practice, when I work with men, one of the therapies that I use is to hand a gentleman a sheet of paper with rows and rows of emotion words on it and ask him to point to those that describe something that he's felt recently. And watching the lights come on when he discovers new words that he hasn't applied to his own experience is a very rewarding thing to see someone realize that is exactly how I felt, but I just didn't really have the words, not because they don't know the words, but it's just not been a part of our experience to encourage that, to encourage them to feel or to talk about how they felt.
It's so true. I think our society has these stereotypes and expectations of men, either that they don't have the emotions or they don't feel it or they don't care about emotion or wouldn't want to talk about it anyway. And I was thinking about even a lot of the marketing materials that I see around grief and around end-of-life issues are clearly targeted to women. They appeal to women's sense of relationship and connection and emotion, and even the colors that are used. And so I don't see very many people who are intentionally reaching out to create a safe space for men, as you described, and to really reach out to men. And I loved it that you have, if I have this right, a happy hour for men, like a Friday happy hour, BYOB group, and I think it's really nice that you have gone out of your way, as a man yourself, like to use the kind of words and create the kind of events that men would be comfortable with.
I for several years, I sponsored a Get Happy Hour. That was for both men and women to come. We would get the back of a restaurant or a side room off of a bar, and we'd have a place to meet. And it was just a place for people to gather and talk about their grief. And we would have anywhere from 8 or 10 to 20 people come. And I think it was about that time that I began to notice men take an interest when they saw that you could be real in talking about your grief. You could actually sit with a beer in your hand with a group of guys in a circle, and in a real life situation where people would feel comfortable, and at the same time be able to talk about these things that seem to be off limits in every other area of society. And so we put that into the men's group that we're starting up through We Grieve, is just this sense of, it's manly to be able to walk into your emotion and face it with strength. Society champions men who are stoic and tough and resilient and unencumbered with emotion. But the truth is, we need to talk about those things that we suffer in terms of emotional pain. We need to be able to get it out. One of the most important aspects of grief, healing through grief in a healthy way, is to be able to face it and to express it and release it, to find a way to get it out. And I think my goal has been to try to give men a place where it's not just okay, but it's actually a healthy and it's a good thing to be able to be in a place with other men where you talk about what it feels like to lose a partner or to lose a child or a powerful loss that we might experience, and to normalize that, to say this is the way it should be. And men have responded to that in strong ways.
That just brings back such memories for me, because when my dad died many years ago of suicide, I remember that 2 of my uncles invited my husband and I to go out with them for a beer. And they took us to a bar where they had gone with my dad many times, all sitting around the table, laughing and telling their stories. They invited us to come there and sit at a table with them. And for a few hours, they just told us story after story of funny memories of things they had done with my dad. And it was in a bar over a beer, because that was the most comfortable place we could possibly be for them. And so I really applaud you for recognizing that sometimes we need to take the services we offer to the right places that will help everyone feel safe and comfortable.
Appreciate that, Dr. White. And what a great opportunity you had to connect with your family in that experience and to allow them to feel what they were feeling. And so to encourage that, it's something our society needs more of.
Yes. And I really feel like I do feel like we have a lot of sites that are offering grief services that are very appealing to women, but that everyone out there maybe needs to consider this. Have I made what I'm doing open and friendly enough for men that men would be comfortable coming? Because in some ways, maybe we've kind of given up on men and just assumed, well, they never show up, so they must not be interested. But in fact, it's half of our society, and we really do need to be getting these messages out to men.
Absolutely. It's a privilege to be able to sit and listen to someone's story and to be able to hear what they've been through. And so much of grief is just about creating a space where it's okay to talk. It's okay to say what you're feeling. It's okay to tell stories. And if emotion comes and tears come, that's just a reflection of the power of the relationship, the power of the love or the respect that maybe you had for that person. And those are things that resonate with men, where there's respect and where there's honor and where someone can talk about what they've been through and be able to share whatever level of detail they want to share about that relationship, but know that it's going to be held, it's going to be important, and that it will live on and continue.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Karl, I know from your bio, I read that you're a certified HeartMath trainer. And some people may not be familiar with HeartMath and what kind of tools they offer, but I wanted to ask you to talk about that, partly because I got to experience for myself at the retreats that we worked on together, you utilizing some of those tools with staff members, and I found them to be very powerful. And in fact, I utilized some of them myself in my own life. So is that something you're comfortable just talking a little bit about HeartMath and what kind of tools you offer?
Sure. HeartMath is a science-based organization based out of California. It's been around a little over 40 years, and they study the relationship between the heart and the brain as it relates to stress. So the HeartMath tools address grief by addressing ways to regulate the autonomic nervous system. So self-regulation of breath and emotion are integral parts of the tools, and they help us manage the fight or flight response that's associated with powerful emotions that are caused by loss, such as anxiety or trauma. And so in the workshops, in fact, tonight I'm starting a workshop that'll be 4 weeks, 4 Monday nights in June, on resilience, building resilience after grief and loss. And we're going to learn about these HeartMath tools and how to use those tools to deal with emotional bursts that just take over, and to bring some balance back in when emotion seems to be so difficult. Also, with those painful thoughts or images that might be traumatic, in terms of, like you mentioned, suicide earlier, that is such a difficult loss because of the trauma that is matched with the loss itself, and compounds just to create almost seemingly insurmountable emotional pain, because it's the event itself has a beginning and a middle and an end, but with these images returning, they could just go on and on and on. And where people with grief struggle a lot is with these images that recur in their mind that bring back all of the pain and the emotion of that event, loss, whether it was a suicide or just the death of a person. And so what HeartMath tools do is teach us how to, through the regulation of breath and emotion, to manage that autonomic nervous system, to be able to bring a coherence back into our nervous system response, to stop the chemicals, the hormones that are being produced that cause our body to be prepared to fight or flight or run or do whatever we need to do, and to bring that balance back so that we can have some coherence and clarity to be able to make really good choices, to look at what's happening to us, and to make choices and decisions, interactions with people from a more stable place. So it's a powerful tool. And it's really a set of tools, but it's a powerful way of being able to help us with the anxiety that comes with trauma and stress and with loss.
And I just wanted to say, first of all, I love that it's all science-based. They've done extensive research on all of these tools, and just to go read some of the studies they've done is really fascinating. I really enjoyed looking into that. But the tools themselves are simple, and they're things that anyone can utilize anywhere, really. And so I'm excited that you're applying these tools to grief. I think that's really powerful, because those of us who've been through deep grief all know what it's like at a certain time to think that you're doing fine one day, only to suddenly have everything fall apart in a moment when you hear a song or see a picture or something comes flooding back to you. And to have tools that you can use to help you kind of regain your equanimity a little bit is really powerful and helpful.
Our society so values consistency and being able to manage expectations and stay in control. And if there's anything that teaches us we have no control, it's grief. Loss takes away from us things that we have held dear and had no idea it was coming, or even if we see on the horizon life coming to an end, whether we think we're ready or not, we're not ready for that. And so being able to have some tools that help us manage that roller coaster of emotion and bring some more normalcy to life is really helpful.
Do you find that men resonate well with the HeartMath tools?
No, they're tools that, because like you said, are so simple. It's not a difficult thing to learn, and I think men value things that they can put into their daily schedule so that they can continue life. They can, this is a tool that's not designed to go into a quiet place and find a closet or get it alone where you can practice this tool. This is a tool that's designed to be in the moment, in the middle of a busy, hectic day, or in whatever a person might be involved in. You don't have to stop your activity to use this tool. It's something designed to be done at the same time you're moving through a very hectic or fast-paced or emotionally powerful moment. And so that's, I think, what the men that I work with find value in, is that they can continue with life, but they can practice this tool at the same time that allows them to find strength, to find within themselves a center, to feel grounded, to feel connected to something powerful inside of them that's helping them through this very difficult time. And that is a really powerful tool to have. It's just a helpful tool.
And then the more we use these tools, like I think it's called the heart ease technique, we can actually retrain our own nervous system in a way so that we build more resilience for the future. Do I have that correct?
Absolutely. This is one of those tools that you learn to use when you don't need it, so that when you need it, you have it. And so the simple act of regulating breath, choosing those emotions like you choose a music station, on your radio or your player, you decide, you choose what you want to think about, and through the regulation of just simple breath, that puts you in a place where your body is now reacting and changing and putting you, in a place to be able to interact with whatever seems to be happening at the moment. And it is a tool that is simple, and yet, like you said earlier, has an effect on our body that is a scientific connection for us that helps what our body normally and naturally wants to do, which is to find that equilibrium, to come to a place of centering.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I think it's wonderful that you're using those tools in the work that you're doing. So you were mentioning for the month of June, you're doing a workshop to teach people some of the tools.
Right. We Grieve, the community, has two sides. There's a free public side and then a member side. And on the free public side, there are print resources that are available, articles, information, exercises that are available on the free resource side. And there are also monthly workshops that are free to the public. And they're 90 minutes long. They're a combination of teaching, storytelling, and interaction, small group discussion. And those are offered once a week for a month. And for the month of June, the topic is building resilience after grief and loss. They're Monday nights from 6 p.m. Mountain Time to 7:30. About an hour of that particular workshop is teaching time. And then about a half hour of it is small group interaction. And the small groups are led by facilitators who are trained grief facilitators that they're not therapists, they're not counselors, professionals, they're volunteers. And they're people who have experienced a loss. They've been through some help with their loss, whether that was one-on-one counseling or a workshop format, and they've received training in how to facilitate support group interactions and in a virtual format. And these facilitators, there'll be one or two in each of the groups, and they guide the discussion, they create a safe place, and they just facilitate the work of connecting people together. And so that's what the free side of We Grieve offers, is these workshops and the resources. And then if a person decided to join the community, it's a $15 a month. That's a recurring charge as long as a person wants to stay apart month by month. Or there's a way to also join in an annual basis. It's $150, which is 10 months, but you get 12 months the whole year. And which, that sounds like a lot of money, but really the $150 for a year membership in We Grieve is about the same price as one session with a professional grief counselor. And so it's a very affordable resource from that standpoint that connects you with a lot of different resources and really gives a context to work with grief that you might, where you might get individual help from a counselor. This puts you in a community of people to learn from, to connect with, to not feel alone, to feel like you have a place you can express and learn from. And so that community of when you join, in addition to the resources in the workshops, you also are connected into a private loss community with your specific loss, like loss of partner, for instance. And you would be in there with 10 or 12 people and a facilitator who have either monthly or bi-monthly Zoom gatherings, so sort of a support group format. And then also a private Facebook group is set up just for those 10 or 12 people that only they can see and be a part of that discussion, so they can communicate with each other. And so this is part of the connecting each other around the grief and the loss. We also have community calls every week where members of the entire We Grieve community can just come in for a 30-minute Zoom call and ask questions or talk about their loss or find support. If their group is not meeting for another week or so, then they can get in on the community call. So it's a place to get help both for free and also by a membership.
Well, I spent some time on the We Grieve website, and you really do have a wealth of information. And I'm so impressed with these workshops that happen every single month around a different topic. And then I assume when you run through those topics, maybe do you start over again with the topic? So, but there's always something every month going on.
Right. We had our workshop. Our first one in April was on faith, walking with faith through grief and loss. So, with loss, people of faith all people have a lot of existential questions to ask. Why is this happening to me? Is there something out there bigger than I am that is either orchestrating or aware of what's going on in my life? Or just a number of those types of spiritually based questions that we ask. And that workshop addressed those issues in addition to just the basic components of healing and healthy grieving. We also had a workshop around the suicide loss. It was dealing with and recovering from a loss by suicide. And so that workshop was specific to the dynamics, which there are many in that particular type of loss. We also have one coming up in July on loss of a partner. We have workshops around special anniversaries, holidays. We have one on loss of a child. So we have at least, I think, 7 or 8 topics at this point before we start repeating those again. But they'll all include a number of just the basic elements of grief and then some special help around that particular aspect of the topic that's coming up.
I wanted to make sure we talked about it for anyone listening out there who themselves are dealing with grief and would like to have some connection, so a place to connect online. I think these free workshops would be a great place to get started, because you could attend this 4-week series of workshops and probably get to know some of the people who are attending the workshops and even some of the facilitators, and that might let you know if you'd like to become a member of the greater We Grieve community and find even more support there.
Absolutely. That's a great way to approach the We Grieve community, is just to come check out one of the workshops. If you go to the wegrieve.net, scroll down the homepage, you'll see a section where the workshops are all listed. You can check a box and put in your email address and your particular loss type and register for any one of those workshops. I think we put them on the website for 6 months out. So you could register for workshops up to 6 months in advance and see what's coming, clear your schedule for that particular time, and make it available. Another aspect that I think is important about this We Grieve community is, when you work alongside people who experience a loss and you want to help, one of the things we do is send a card, or maybe we, go to ProFlowers or flowers.com and we send some flowers. And these days we're not really sure where to send the flowers or if there's a service, because there's not always a memorial service that happens quickly. And so sometimes we're not sure how to help. And one of the things we've added to the We Grieve community is a way to gift a membership in We Grieve. You can actually go on and gift a membership to someone, and all you need is their email address, and you can gift them either a 3, a 6, or a 12-month membership that is equal to what you might have spent on flowers and a card or some kind of a gift or something for someone who's had a loss. So when you have someone in your family or a friend down the street or someone you work with, and you are looking for ways to help other than just being compassionate and caring, gifting a We Grieve membership is a good way to say I care, but also to provide something tangible that actually gives them help with the emotional pain that they're experiencing.
Karl, if someone did receive a gift of the We Grieve membership, is it something that they have to start utilizing immediately, or could they wait for a little while? If they didn't feel ready yet, could they wait a month or two before they started the membership?
Absolutely. Grief is, we would love for that to be a linear experience where we start at A, we go to B and C and D, and we work our way through, and then we're all done with it and we feel better. But grief is not linear, as we all know. It is more like waves of emotion and the way it comes into our life. And then sometimes we feel like we're okay for a while, and then all of a sudden here it is again. Absolutely. I think if someone receives a We Grieve membership and they just send an email that says, hey, this is not a good time for me, can you put me on hold for a couple of months, or when I get back to you, I'd like then to use my membership, that is absolutely possible. And we would be happy to work with them because the goal is about providing help. It's about connecting people at a time when they need it. And that would be absolutely appropriate.
And then one thing I wanted to clarify with you, which I'm sure has come up for you all the time in your work as a chaplain and for hospice when you have workshops on faith, is that people may always ask, oh, wait, are you representing only one particular type of faith? So as a chaplain, I just wanted you to be able to address that, to reassure people that you're not promoting any one religion or another, that this is something that's kind of is broad for everyone, that everyone experiences. Thank
you, Karen, for bringing that up, because it's a really important aspect of the chaplain and the faith piece. Pastors or priests, or whatever the title might be, rector, whatever it might be, or tend to be shepherds of a particular flock, but chaplains are really shepherds to the world. And so it's not about trying to get people to adhere to a particular faith belief or to adopt something, but it's more about helping people discover what is their faith, what do they believe, and to find support and to strength and encouragement from that. And so when there's a faith component of these workshops, if 95% of the people in that workshop are one particular faith, then that might take on more of the conversation, but not in a way of trying to evangelize a group, but more to just, who are we here as people, and what do we believe, and how can we find support and help in that? And that I found really effective at helping people adopt their spirituality or their faith in the support that they're going through in terms of their grief and loss. And so in We Grieve, we do have that approach of, this is about helping you to incorporate a component of faith and spirituality, and not necessarily to give you one.
Yes, I just think it's always important to reassure people about that question. I'm sure as a chaplain, you've heard that over and over again throughout your work, but so I wanted to make sure we clarified that. But
Karen, let me just say also, I have found people love to talk about how their faith lines up. There's so few opportunities in our society to really have an in-depth conversation about how does my faith really help me in what I'm going through. And I just find people so open to wanting to talk about it from a very real place, a place of looking for practical help from my faith.
So that's really good to note. And I was going to say, for myself, as having been on my grief journey after my dad's death for many, many years, I'm at a place now where I've been ready for quite a while to give something back, because I'm coming from a place now where a lot of the pain that I used to carry with me has been healed, or I'm back to a place of equilibrium much of the time, and now feel that I have something I can maybe offer to other people who are going on a similar journey. And I even feel compelled. I want to reach out and help those people. And that's why I do the podcast and what I do. But I was impressed that you also, through We Grieve, offer facilitator training. So if there are people out there like me who are further along in their own journey and feel like, but I have something to give and I would like to help others on the journey, would you tell us a little about the facilitator training?
I appreciate that. Facilitators, like we said, are those people who are volunteers in the We Grieve community. They come alongside others who are grieving, and they're those who are a little further along on the journey. And that's not really a time element; it's more of a process. And so, if someone wanted, through the experience that they've had with their own grief, to be able to help others, then I would engage them in a conversation and get to know them, with a personal interview as a founder of We Grieve, and get to know their story, hear a little bit of their background, have them participate in maybe one of our workshops as a participant to observe, and then actually to go through a training that I have put the material together for, developed, and do the training myself. Would go through that training with them, and then maybe partner them with another facilitator, so they wouldn't just be alone in a group from the very beginning, but would be able to assist and to help. And then whenever they were ready, they could facilitate their own group in their own private loss community or at one of the workshops, and to be able to help. I have just found that these people, like you just described yourself as, Karen, as someone who has had an experience they've grown from, they've learned, and they see the value and just want to use that to make a difference in the lives of others, find this an incredibly rewarding volunteer experience. A number of hours, I did some research in the Denver, Colorado area, which is where I live, on what amount of time people tend to volunteer, and it was around 10 to 12 hours a month on average, what people might be asked in a basic volunteer situation. And that's, a little under that or right at that is where the We Grieve volunteer role kind of lands. If in a month where there was a workshop, it's a little bit more, but if you're not facilitating in a workshop, the volunteer amount of time is about half of that. And it's just a very rewarding thing to be able to see your experience show up in someone else's life in making a difference for them and helping them to see they're not alone, and that, wow, maybe I could get through this. If Dr. Wyatt has followed this path and has made it to this place, maybe I could do the same thing. Maybe I can survive this, and maybe I can find, normalcy in my life again in some way that I could ever, feel life was back to some sense of enjoyment.
And so it seems to me being a facilitator is just a great way to continue your own journey, and be part of a community still,
Right.
and participate, but then also be able to offer of what you've learned already. And I can imagine there are people out there who for a while have been thinking, I wish there was a way I could reach out and help other people. But here it is. You don't have to create it yourself. You don't have to go out and figure out how to create an online workshop yourself or set something up in your own community. This would be a really easy way for people to step up and get involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's rewarding. It's not complicated. It doesn't take a lot of time. And like you said, it's already set up for you. And so I would just invite, you can find my contact information at the wegrieve.net website. And I would love to hear from you if you'd be interested in being a facilitator.
Yeah, so I encourage everyone listening to at least go check out the website, wegrieve.net, because there are a lot of resources there. And it's a really beautiful website. You've done a very nice job creating it, Karl. And then also take advantage of the free resources that are available, including the workshops every month. I think that's just tremendous that you're offering that. And I'm sure it's making a huge difference.
Absolutely, it is. And thank you so much, Dr. Wyatt, for inviting me to speak with you today. It's been great to reconnect, and I appreciate all that you're doing to bring healing in our world. And you do it in such an awesome way. Your approach and just your voice is so calming. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Karl. Well, we're all on this team together trying to make a difference. So I mean, I love that we all bring whatever gifts we have to the table and do whatever we can. And somehow we're covering a lot of the bases between us all. And so I'm just appreciative that you got inspired last year during COVID to create We Grieve, and now you're putting it out into the world and making a difference. And then I want to emphasize again the guys only group, which I think that is a game changer. So if anyone out there, this might be a great thing to gift. If you know a man who's going through grief, this might be one of the very best things you could do for that man, to give a membership, a gift membership, so that they could take part in the guys group.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Wyatt.
You're welcome, Karl, and let's stay in touch. I want to hear how things go. So take care and good luck.
Thank you. We will.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Karl about his We Grieve community, and also how he's working with men specifically around grief issues. As I mentioned, I worked with Karl for a number of years in the past doing retreats for hospice staff, which was extremely rewarding, and I really enjoyed doing that work with him. And he's an amazing person, and I'm so excited about this new project of his. I loved it when he talked about when he does one-on-one counseling with men and their grief, he presents them with a list of emotions and has men read through the list and point to the emotion that most describes what they're feeling. I think that's really valuable to recognize that sometimes men may not have the word for emotions. For one thing, they may not have been taught those words. They are not encouraged in our society to experience their own emotions or express them. And that sometimes you need a little help with the vocabulary in order to talk about what it is you're feeling inside. I thought that was just a very simple tool that actually honors where men are coming from and doesn't expect them to be able to articulate emotions, but provides them with a little bit of help in bringing those emotions to the surface and talking about them. So I encourage you to go to Karl's website and check out all of the free workshops that he has going on every week, a different topic each month. And there may still be time for June to catch one of his workshops on using HeartMath tools in working with grief. They're excellent tools. So I highly recommend that you follow Karl and then take in any of the free workshops that they're offering through We Grieve that might be beneficial to you over time. So that's it for today. I'll remind you there's a new episode every Monday, so come back next week and tune in and see what I cook up for you next time around. And also, if you enjoy this content, remember to share it with other people or suggest the podcast to them if you think they would benefit from it. You can also help by subscribing on whatever platform you happen to listen to the podcast and then leaving a review and a rating there. That raises the podcast up in the rankings so that more people are likely to see it if they're searching for this kind of content. You can also support the podcast by going to my Patreon page at patreon.com/EOLU. You can sign up there to be a supporter for just a couple of dollars a month and help me keep the podcast going and keep it on the air. And again, I'll also remind you, I have another podcast, a brand new one called What Really Matters Podcast, and I'll leave a link to that in the show notes as well. So until we're together next week, remember we're here for love. So face your fear, be ready for whatever happens next, and love each and every moment of this life. Bye-bye.